The movie opens up in a peaceful village somewhere in Norway. A young boy named Thor, who is extremely tall and sturdy for his age, is fooling around in his stable. He wants to be a warrior and is currently pretending to fight against a giant. His mother, who wants her son to focus on being a good blacksmith, catches him in the middle of his silly battle. Moments later, Thor's friend Ida arrives at his home and asks his mother where Thor is. Mom simply tells her to follow the rumble, referring to the din her son is making. Ida then finds Thor in the stable under the rubble of the makeshift giant that he had made. He pulls himself out, greets her, and asks what brings her here. In response, she shows him her cauldron, which has a big hole in it. She wants Thor to fix it since he is a blacksmith in training. Just then, 3 Viking warriors also arrive at Thor's house and ask the boy to make them a set of armor. They say they want to look fabulous when they die and finally make it to the halls of afterlife. Thor, enamored by the warriors, readily takes up the job and immediately begins working on it. However, Ida is offended and points out that she was here before the men. Her friend then tells her that he has to make the armor first as a sign of respect to the warriors. From their conversation, it is also revealed that Thor is actually the son of Odin, the god of all gods. Elsewhere, we see a bunch of dead warriors trying to find their way to Valhalla. All Viking warriors who have given their lives in battle are welcomed in Valhalla, where they feast with Odin himself in the giant palace named the Halls of the Warriors. They are wandering off helplessly when Heimdall, the keeper of the Rainbow Bridge, sees them. Heimdall has immaculate vision and hearing abilities, and he is easily able to tell that these warriors want an entry into Valhalla. So he brings out his horn and bellows it, summoning the Rainbow Bridge that joins Earth with Valhalla. The Viking warriors then cross over to Valhalla one by one, completely unaware that someone else is following them. It is revealed that the small being following them is the elf, Sindri. He is an exceptional smith who is unmatched in his ability to make powerful magical weapons. Once everyone is across the bridge, Heimdall lets the warriors pass by. He then uses his immense ability of vision and realizes that Sindri is not a fraud. So, Heimdall, being the chief protector of Valhalla, bellows his horn once more and the Rainbow Bridge disappears. Sindri drops to the endless crevice below, but he suddenly emerges up in his magical flying paper boat. Before Heimdall can stop him, he sneaks into Valhalla and goes straight to the halls of the warrior. Then we cut back to Thor, who is returning back from the market. He meets his best friend Ida right before he gets back to his house. The boy apologizes to her for prioritizing the warrior's armor ahead of her stew pot. The latter eventually forgives him, and the two play with each other for a while. Shortly afterwards, Thor reaches his home only to be immediately confronted by his mother. She asks if he has completed the tasks he was assigned, and the boy finally snaps. He tells his mom that he doesn't want to be a blacksmith anymore. Instead, he wants to fight side by side with his father, Odin. However, Mum seems to be more aware of Odin's true character than the boy who has only heard stories about the god of all gods. She points out that his almighty father has ignored all the prayers and sacrifices she sent up to him. This could only mean one thing: he is uninterested in the affairs of the mortal world known as Midgard. Instead of being discouraged to pursue his dream of being a warrior, Thor gets a brand new idea. He tries to sacrifice the roast pig they were going to have for dinner. The boy hopes that the sacrifice will carry his message to his father, who will then come back to help. Back in Valhalla, we are introduced to Odin and his wife Freya. She is an incredible beauty, and is known all over the universe as the goddess of love. She is trying to get Odin to stop partying because their sworn enemies, the giants, are apparently trying to start a war with their kingdom. But Odin ignores her and goes back to drinking and feasting with the warriors who are doing the same. Odin apparently is also ignoring his son, who is trying to reach him with his sacrificed pig. These sacrifices reach Valhalla as food that emerges from a magical oven. The smith elf, Sindri, runs up to Odin and introduces himself as the maker of mythical weapons. Currently, he has one such mythical powerful weapon, a warhammer named Crusher. The hammer has a face, a consciousness of its own, and also speaks to its bearer. Sindri tries to demonstrate the power of his weapon when Crusher accidentally ends up knocking out Odin's eye. Odin, because he's too prideful to realize how having a hammer that commands lightning would be a massive advantage, throws out both Sindri and the hammer into oblivion. Back at Midgard, Thor is having trouble dealing with his mom snoring. Crusher ends up falling through the house all the way to their basement. Thor's mother apparently takes this as a sign that he needs to be a blacksmith. The next morning, Thor tries to use Crusher to repair Ida's stew pot, only for the hammer to tell him that he is not for that purpose. However, When Crusher tries to demonstrate its power, nothing happens. Meanwhile, Sindri, who still has Odin's eye with him, is heading towards the Jotunheim in his magical paper boat to see if the giants appreciate his weapons. There he is introduced to Hel, the queen of the giants. Anyway, by taking Odin's eye from Sindri, she can see everything Odin would have normally seen with it, which is great for spying. But Sindri gets thrown into the dungeon when he tells Hel he doesn't have Crusher with him. We cut back to Thor, who is still training with a broom despite having an actual weapon. The giants in Hel attack Thor's village and imprison every warrior who fights back against them. Since even Hel points out that the dead warriors will just go straight to Odin, it doesn't stop the giants from killing Ida's grandfather when he tries to help her. The giants then imprison Ida with the other warriors. Thor tries to stop them, somehow thinking with a broom will be more useful against the giants than a hammer. It goes even worse as Thor's mum intervenes but then gets frozen and captured by Hel. And when Thor does try to use the hammer, this time he actually throws it. It doesn't work, but this does attract Hel's attention since she is looking for the hammer. But Thor is able to distract her wolf, Fenrir, by using a stick and makes it go fetch. But before he can use it to fight back, he ends up swinging Crusher around and flying off. Hel decides to do the stupid thing and not go after him, though she does say she'll make Sindri make them 100 more hammers like it. Meanwhile, back at Valhalla, Freya helps Odin realize that maybe Hel, whose heart he broke years ago, might be the one responsible for the rampage in the moral world. The warriors in Valhalla are in no condition to fight, so Odin decides to pay his son a visit. The said son has decided to finally listen to his magical talking hammer and train with him in the empty city. But, thankfully, Thor finally gets the hang of it, but the giants are probably in the underworld by now. So, in order to get there, Crusher conjures up some magic and grants the two rams nearby the ability to fly. Then Thor puts a carriage behind the rams and they have themselves a flying vehicle. Thor does catch up to the giants who have captured several of his villagers, including Ida. He confronts them and throws Crusher at them, but as expected, he misses. The giants turn out to be too powerful for him and tie him up. Despite this, Thor tries his best to put up a good fight. Eventually, he gets cornered and is about to be smashed to a pulp, when luckily for him, Odin and Freya show up just in time to scare the giants off. However, instead of helping Thor save his friends, they think that he needs to abandon them and have proper training first. Thor refuses to go along with them, and instead goes directly to challenge the king of the giants without training. And while Odin doesn't do the nice thing and follow his son into the underworld, he does send his raven after him, so at least we'll be able to watch where Thor is. By the way, Sindri escaped Hel's prison earlier, but he just went right back to his workshop where he's caught immediately. Hel tries to get him to make more hammers, but apparently it took Sindri 20 years to make Crusher, and it will take him 20 more years to make another one. So they just freeze him and wait for Thor to bring them Crusher. Thor shows up in the underworld to challenge the Giant King, who looks like he's wearing a championship belt. But luckily for him, the Giant King won't fight him, and instead has him fight his champion. The champion turns out to be some geriatric tiny lady with a walker, but the old lady turns out to be a powerful entity named Old Age, who has the power to speed up time and make anyone old in a matter of a few minutes. She ages Thor into her old man and beats him easily, but Ida, who had escaped during Thor's arrival, steals his magic goat cart and whisks him away in the nick of time. Unfortunately, she doesn't get to Crusher, who is left behind in Hel's domain. Despite Crusher apparently having a consciousness and refusing to work for the bad guys, Hel is able to easily brainwash him with a spell. Somehow, Thor and Ida survive when their magic car collapses, but Ida ends up alone with the unconscious Thor in a rocky field in the middle of nowhere. Odin knows about it thanks to the Raven, but he can't do anything to help him. Apparently, Odin didn't need to do anything because Old Age's power just wears off of Thor. Hel uses Crusher to summon a giant blizzard and prepares the giant army to go conquer Valhalla. Thor and Ida, who are also trying to find a way to get to the Heavenly Kingdom to get help from Odin, are caught right in the middle of it. Thor wants to go get Crusher, but the giants find them first, freezing Ida, but they don't get Thor as he dodges Hel's attack and eventually runs away. Hel sends a couple of her giants after Thor and marches the rest of her army towards Valhalla. But Thor escapes them and runs towards a nearby lake where he tries to make a cross, hopping on some icebergs. Unfortunately, he drops into the icy cold water, and the current drags him all the way into the inner sanctum of Hel. He finds a cave there and realizes this is where Hel keeps all the humans whom she has frozen using her sword. Among the several bodies, Thor finds his best buddy, Ida, there too, encased in a block of ice. A devastated Thor cries over Ida's ice block and looks lost, realizing that his friend is gone forever. However, his single tear drops over the ice block and melts it away. Ida comes out, and a positively happy Thor hugs her tightly. This is when all the other ice blocks also melt away, freeing all the prisoners that Hel had captured. This group also contains Sindri as well as Thor's mother, who is happy to see her son after such a long time. Unfortunately, Thor's tear appears to be a little too potent because the whole cavern starts melting. Sindri, who has managed to sneak out of the cave unseen by anyone, sees the icicles falling on the people inside. He has a change of heart and decides to help them. Thor and the magical elf introduce each other, and the latter summons his magical paper boat. In it, he takes Thor and Mom along with him to Valhalla. In the meantime, Hel and her forces are stuck on the way to Valhalla because Fenrir has to take a leak. They eventually move forward and reach the point where the Rainbow Bridge to Valhalla starts. Heimdall, who is watching from across a giant crevasse, has his vision obscured because of the huge blizzard accompanying the army of the giants. Hel plays one more trick and puts the warriors she captured in front of the blizzard. Heimdall, seeing that these are simply Viking warriors, blares his horn and summons the Rainbow Bridge. This turns out to be a mistake as Hel then uses her black sword to freeze the bridge and make it permanent. She, riding on Fenrir, followed by an army of giants, then makes it right to the gates of Valhalla. Heimdall has closed it for the time being, and several Valkyries are now manning the outposts. They fire several arrows which do nothing but tickle the giants. After a bit of struggle, Hel's army charges through the gate and comes upon Valhalla at long last. The warriors in Valhalla, who have spent the last several centuries drinking and partying, are in no shape or form to mount an offensive against such a formidable enemy. Hel sweeps aside any that come in front of her and goes into the halls of the warriors to confront Odin. The god of gods does get a chance to take a swing at Hel though. He ambushes her from behind a table and throws a spear aimed at her head. But the one-eyed god misses it, and the spear flies away with Hel's toupee instead. As the irritated Hel gets her hairdo back, Odin takes this opportunity to hide behind his throne. However, he doesn't realize that his enemy has his all-seeing eye. Hel pops Odin's eye in her skull and immediately pins out where her nemesis is hiding. The god, realizing that there is no way to escape, comes out with his charm and wit. He tries to sweet-talk to Hel, but the latter has no emotions, which are exclusively human traits. She menacingly approaches Odin and is about to finish him with Crusher, when suddenly Thor arrives on top of the hall. He jumps from Sindri's boat and immediately confronts Hel, but the boy is no match for her, and she uses the power of the magical hammer to electrocute him several times. With no option left, Thor tries to appeal to the emotions of his beloved Crusher. He reminds it of all the time they trained together and encourages the hammer to come back to the good side. Hel laughs at his futile attempts and gets ready to throw the hammer to crush Thor once and for all. Suddenly, her hand cannot move Crusher as the hammer freezes midair. The evil queen does manage to throw the hammer towards Thor, but it stops just before hitting the boy. Then, in a brilliant flash of light, Crusher regains its bright golden color. Thor now has his weapon back, and he immediately uses it with full intent. He makes the queen flee first, freeing his father from the claws of Hel. Following this, Thor goes out and wipes the floor with the army of the giants. We also get to see Ida and her grandfather fighting against a giant. Thor helps them, and eventually, the giant army is completely defeated. Once all his minions have been wiped out, the giant king is left all alone to face his foes. He is outmatched and eventually tied to a huge catapult. Then, he is slinged all the way back to Jotunheim where he lands in the dungeons. As he gets back his wits, he sees old age waiting for him. The cursed entity then turns the giant king into an old man. Back at Valhalla, the giants are driven out one by one. Everything looks to be going according to plan for our heroes, but at the last second, Hel emerges from the shadows. She takes Ida hostage and has her black sword placed around the human's throat. Seeing his best friend in trouble, Thor comes out with a plan. The evil queen asks him to get rid of the weapon, and he chucks the hammer away with great force. However, just as Hel thinks the boy is now powerless, the hammer comes back after taking a round of the earth and hits her. This ends up making Hel stab herself with her own black sword. She freezes into an ice block like all of her victims, and is transported straight to the deepest chambers of the underworld. There, she is greeted by none other than the giant king, who is now turned into an old man. Back at Valhalla, Thor is acknowledged by his father, Odin, and they decide to call the day of his victory Thor's Day. As the movie comes to an end, we see Fenrir howling at the gates of Valhalla. apparently sad for its master.